Sharon Guynup is a public policy fellow with the Wilson Center's Environmental Change and Security and Global Sustainability and Resilience programs. She's also a journalist, author, and photographer, and has contributed to, among others, the New York Times and National Geographic. She joins us today to discuss wildlife trafficking. Sharon, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
I want to ask you first about a definition of wildlife trafficking in this context. What are we talking about? And then how widespread the practice is.
Well, let's start by describing the scope. This is a global crisis. This is a $15 to $20 billion a year business. And any animal that is an endangered species, on the endangered species list, is illegal for international cross-border trade. Mm-hmm. Many nations also have, local, domestic laws governing, sale of parts, products, or those live animals.
And how, again, on the widespread, the dollar figure, are there pockets where this is really intense on the planet? I would guess places like the Amazon that are rich in wildlife, or Africa, or is it evenly spread across the globe?
Well, much of the focus has been on Africa most recently. About 96 elephants a day are killed in Africa. 96
a day?
Yes, and they're obviously being traded for their ivory. China is the biggest consumer both of, ivory from illegally poached elephants. Mm-hmm. They're also the largest consumer of all illegal wildlife products. Most people don't realize that the United States is the second largest consumer of illegal wildlife products.
What is the demand within the United States?
There's many different products. Many of them are things like sea turtle eggs or conch meat, or animals for the pet trade. You may go to a pet shop and buy your kid a lizard or a baby alligator or fish for your aquarium. Many of them came out of the wild from other countries.
So is it not illegal to sell them, just illegal to acquire them in the first place? Or
it's
is there illegality at both
ends? Too.
So this is just under the radar?
It's under the radar.
Why is that? Is it that law enforcement doesn't care, or is it just difficult to enforce these laws?
The amount of products that come into any country on any given day through many different ports is absolutely impossible to police. So there's many porous borders in developing countries. Much of this trade is flowing from Africa, across Asia to China, or from Asia to China, also to Vietnam. Indonesia is a big player. Malaysia is a big player. There's a lot of trafficking through Thailand. Some of it is a legal issue. The laws aren't strong enough. Some of it's an enforcement issue. And the big issue is demand. These products are worth so much money. I have a statistic here. Poachers have killed an average of 3,000 elephants a year in Tanzania. The street market value is $10.5 million. So when you're talking that kind of money, it's pretty tough to fight. Another example, demand for powdered rhino horn killed 1,175 rhinos in South Africa last year. And rhino horn is worth more pound for pound than cocaine.
Yeah. So these are, as you said, mostly endangered animals, endangered species. Is there any concentrated effort anywhere globally to crack down on this?
There is, and we really need to thank Prince William for putting this on the global radar. Back in 2012, he stepped up, put together a world conference, and brought it to the public's attention, mainly because this is not just wiping out wildlife. It's also feeding money into the coffers of some of the most dangerous terrorist organizations in the world, organizations like the Lord's Resistance Army in Africa. There's also growing awareness that the people at the top running this international trade, if they're not terrorists, they're international cartels. Uh-huh. So this is actually
a side business for drug lords.
This is this is a global security issue.
Yeah, so these the criminals, the traffickers, this is a very organized system, what you're describing. This isn't random poachers, individuals. These are cartels, as you said, or other types of organizations.
There may be the random poacher, but for the
they're a
most
small
part,
percent.
this
So-
is big business.
So should the CIA, the Pentagon, other security type agencies be paying more attention to this?
They actually are. There was a meeting 2 weeks ago here in Washington, D.C., convened by President Obama's Wildlife Trafficking Task Force that brought together agency individuals from across government, from intelligence, from FBI, CIA, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is obviously very involved in this because that's their domain, is enforcement. But here in the U.S., it's become a very, very serious focus.
You've mentioned rhinos, elephants. Could you give us some other of the animals that are most traded or most captured, whether it be for their products or for the actual living animal? What are some of the other animals that are most in the danger zone?
Yeah, there's many, many other animals that are being poached to near extinction. The largest mammal traded anywhere in the world is the pangolin. Most people have never even seen a pangolin or know what it is, but
Where are they from?
They're from both Asia and Africa. There's 8 species total. They range in size from about this to this, plus a tail. They're scaly. They kind of look a little bit like a cross between an anteater and an armadillo.
Yeah,
absolutely. One other animal
What are they poached for?
both their meat, which is eaten, and scales, which is used for medicinal reasons. And again, it's worth so much money. One other animal that is not getting enough attention is the tiger, which is particularly close to my heart. I've written a lot on tigers and had the incredible privilege of seeing them in the wild. There are under 4,000 tigers left in the wild, and that's split among 5 subspecies. So when you do the math, they're almost gone. And although there's many, many tigers in captivity, both in captive breeding farms where they're farmed for their parts and products, and zoos, those, captive bred animals can't be returned to the wild. They both they're used to people, which makes them dangerous. It also means if they're used to hanging around people, they're going to poach livestock. And again, that's people's livelihoods. So just because we have tigers in captivity doesn't mean that we can return them to the wild.
Same as having them in the wild. It's like what's happened with orcas. I should mention to our viewers that the images you're getting to see during this discussion were shot by Sharon and her husband. And so thank you for making those available. Get to see your work as we talk to you about this issue. I also want to ask you about sort of what needs to be done. You've mentioned activity, but you also describe a problem that doesn't seem to be going away. And in the case of certain species like the tiger is at the verge of extinction. We're butting up against extinction. What needs to be done?
Well, globally, we need to address this as a serious, serious problem. And we are. The United Nations Environment Program has asked for fast-track solutions. Interpol has gotten involved in all kinds of enforcement initiatives along with individual countries. Countries are now starting to work across borders. The focus is much more on the kingpins. You can bust a poacher who's killing or catching an animal in the wild, but there's many, many more to replace that person. So if you're going after the middlemen and the top people involved in this trade, then that's the way to stop it. However, the big issue is demand. You can't, not enough enforcement in the world will stop this. It's just too lucrative.
Does that mean it's unsolvable?
No, it doesn't. Look at some of the strides that we've made recently on seriously intractable issues. The U.S. and China teamed up and came up with a climate agreement on climate change. The U.S. and China recently signed an agreement on stopping all domestic trade of illegal ivory in both countries. So I believe that if the U.S. and China decided that this could not go on because
as number 1 and 2 on
yes,
the abuse charge.
Absolutely, and that's where we've stood on both of the issues that I mentioned, ivory and climate. We totally can stop this. One great concern is that China just updated their 1989 wildlife law, and there's a clause in that law that says if they can successfully farm, captive raise, any kind of endangered wildlife, it comes off the country's endangered species list, which means it's then, up for commercial exploitation.
But then these are also the animals you described that are not fit to be re-released into the wild or released into the wild.
And as long as there's available products, people want them.
You encourage the demand, not
Absolutely.
discourage it.
And it also offers a way to, launder illegally obtained, wildlife. It's very easy to, mix in some tiger skins from India along with tiger skins that came from a tiger farm in China. And in China, they have 6,000 tigers in tiger farms.
But before we close, are there, for people who are concerned about this and would like to be part of a solution, are there organizations that they can look to either volunteer or contribute to?
Absolutely. 2 organizations that are doing really great work are IFAW, the International Fund for Animal Welfare, and another one is Wild Aid. Both of them are addressing demand in really creative, innovative ways. They've engaged pop stars, actors, business leaders to do PSAs. They've done all kinds of public campaigns, billboards, ads on the sides of buses that say things like, when the buying stops, the killing can too, and dismisses a belief in China that elephant tusks are teeth. Many people in China didn't realize that elephants died for ivory. They thought they just lost a tooth. So, there's been this huge public education campaign, and 75% of Chinese did not know that in the beginning. After this campaign, 4 years in, 20% of Chinese didn't know that elephants died for ivory. So these are really
progress can happen.
Effective campaigns.
That's good to hear. We'll end on that up note, but thank you for shedding some light on this under-discussed issue. Appreciate your time,
Thank you
Sharon.
so much.